Tariq Mwendwa grew up in a world most people only saw in magazines. His family lived in Nairobi's richest neighborhood, with guards at the gate, shiny cars in the driveway, and a private jet waiting at the airport. From the outside, they looked perfect. But behind the golden walls, Tariq was the shadow no one wanted to see. His father, Chief Baraka Mwendwa, one of Kenya's most powerful men, treated him like a stranger. His stepmother, Zahara, made it worse. She whispered lies, turned people against him, and made sure everyone knew he didn't belong. Servants avoided his eyes, relatives ignored his presence, and friends drifted away. Tariq never understood what he had done wrong. On the night of his father's 60th birthday, the mansion was glowing with lights. Expensive cars filled the driveway, and laughter echoed through the halls. Inside, glasses clinked as people toasted to Chief Baraka's success. But outside, under the rain, stood Tariq. His clothes were soaked, his heart heavy. He watched through the window as the people he once called family celebrated without him. The guards didn't even let him in. For years, he had tried to earn his father's love, but now he saw the truth: he was never meant to be part of that world. As the thunder rolled above the city, Tariq turned away from the mansion, the sound of laughter fading behind him. That night, he promised himself one thing: one day, they would remember the son they tried to erase. A few days after the birthday party, when the sound of laughter had faded and the lights of the mansion were just a memory, Tariq woke up to a knock at the door. A man in a suit stood outside, holding an envelope stamped with the Mwendwa family crest. Tariq's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a letter from his father's lawyers. The words hit him like a slap: "You are not my blood. You are no longer a part of this family. All accounts, properties, and privileges have been revoked effective immediately." For a long moment, Tariq just stared, unable to breathe. Everything he had ever known, his home, his security, his name, was gone in a few lines of ink. Before he could even process it, Zahara appeared in the doorway, dressed in her perfect white gown, her face painted with that same cruel smile. She took the letter from his trembling hand, scanned it, and smirked. "You never were his son," she whispered coldly. "Now the world will finally know." Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor, each step echoing like a farewell. Within hours, the story spread like wildfire. Nairobi's elite couldn't stop talking. "The fake heir," the blog said. "The bastard son thrown out of the $31 million Mwendwa empire." His phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages from people pretending to care, from fake friends asking what happened just to gossip later. By the next day, every major tabloid had his face on the front page. His humiliation was public, and his pain was entertainment. He went to the bank, hoping it was all a mistake, but every account was frozen. His credit cards declined. His car was taken. Security guards who once saluted him now looked away. By evening, he stood outside the gates of the only home he had ever known, holding a small duffel bag. Zahara's voice echoed behind him one last time: "Don't come back, Tariq. The family doesn't need your pity story." That night, he slept in his car near the edge of the city. The rain hit the windshield softly, and in the dim light of his dashboard, he pulled out an old, worn photo, his mother smiling, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. She had died when he was just a boy, and her memory was the only warmth he had left. He pressed the photo to his chest and whispered, "I'll make you proud, Mama. They can take everything, but not who I am." As the city lights flickered in the distance, Tariq made a silent promise. He would not beg. He would not break. He would start from nothing if he had to, but one day, the world would know the truth. The people who called him a mistake would see that the real mistake was letting him go. Tariq's life fell apart faster than he could believe. One week he was the son of one of the richest men in Nairobi, and the next he was living in his car by the coast of Mombasa. The days were long, the heat unforgiving, and the silence heavy. He found a job at a small gas station, working 12-hour shifts just to afford one meal a day. Sometimes he would go without eating, pretending he wasn't hungry. At night, he'd recline the driver's seat, stare at the roof of his car, and think about how fast the world had forgotten him. No friends called, no one asked where he had gone. The city had moved on. The only thing that kept him going was his mother's old photo. He talked to it like she could hear him. "You were the only one who ever loved me," he'd whisper. "I just wish I knew why you left so soon." The sound of waves outside his window was his only answer. One late evening, as he filled up a customer's car, an old man in a gray suit stepped out. He looked out of place, too refined for a dusty gas station. "Are you Tariq Mwendwa?" the man asked in a soft, calm voice. Tariq nodded warily. "My name is Mr. Kenga," the man said. "I once worked for your mother before she passed away." The name struck Tariq like lightning. He hadn't heard anyone mention his mother in years. Mr. Kenga opened his briefcase and pulled out a yellowed envelope sealed with a faded red wax mark. "Your mother asked me to give you this when the time was right," he said. "And I think that time has come." Tariq hesitated before taking it. His fingers trembled as he broke the seal and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was neat and familiar, it was hers. "My dear Tariq," the letter read, "if you ever doubt who you are, take the test." Attached to the note was a small DNA kit with her name written on it and a line that said, "Truth burns brighter than power." Tariq stared at the words, his throat tightening. What did she mean? Doubt who he was? His entire life had been built on a lie, but he didn't know which part. Was Baraka really not his father? Was Zahara right all along? A wave of emotions hit him, anger, confusion, fear, and a spark of hope. Mr. Kenga looked at him with kind, tired eyes. "Your mother was a brave woman," he said quietly. "She knew things that others wanted to hide. You deserve to know too." That night, Tariq sat on the beach, the DNA kit in his hand, the moonlight shimmering on the water. The wind carried the smell of salt and truth. For the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him, not hate, not pain, but purpose. He looked at the waves and whispered, "All right, Mama. Let's find the truth." Weeks passed slowly as Tariq waited for the DNA results. Each morning, he checked his email, half hoping, half afraid of what he might find. The nights were the hardest. He would sit in his car by the beach, staring at the stars, wondering what truth his mother had wanted him to see. The words in her letter echoed in his mind, "If you ever doubt who you are, take the test." He thought he already knew who he was, the unwanted son, the mistake, the outcast. But deep down, something told him this test might change everything. One hot afternoon, as he finished another long shift at the gas station, his phone buzzed. It was an email from the DNA lab. His heart began to race. His hands trembled so badly he almost dropped the phone. He sat in his car, took a deep breath, and opened it. The words blurred before his eyes as he tried to make sense of them. Then he read it again, slowly this time, and froze. The result said he was not biologically related to Chief Baraka Mwendwa. But the next line made his stomach drop even further. The test had found a close paternal match, Ambrose Kamathi. Tariq sat there in silence for a long time. The name felt familiar. Then it hit him, Ambrose Kamathi was Baraka's old business partner, the man everyone said had died years ago, the original founder of Mwendwa Steel before Baraka took full control. Tariq had heard his name whispered in boardrooms when he was a child, always in hushed, careful tones. People said Ambrose's death was sudden, mysterious, and that after he was gone, Baraka's empire grew overnight. Tariq's mind spun as the pieces started to fit together. If Ambrose was his biological father, then that meant his mother had been with Ambrose, not Baraka, and Zahara and Baraka had taken everything that once belonged to him. The company, the fortune, even the name. They had built their empire on betrayal, burying his mother's truth and erasing him in the process. He wasn't the outsider after all. He was the rightful heir, the blood of the man who had built it all. Tariq's chest tightened with anger and disbelief. He thought about all the years he had spent begging for love from a man who had stolen his life. He thought of Zahara's cruel words, calling him a mistake, a fake heir. The irony burned deep. She had spent years mocking him for being not family, and now the DNA proved she had been right, but in the worst way possible for her. That night, Tariq met Mr. Kenga again and showed him the results. The old lawyer nodded slowly, as if he already knew. "Your mother tried to tell the truth, but they silenced her," he said softly. "Now it's your turn to finish what she started." As the sun set over Mombasa, Tariq felt the pain inside him turn into quiet determination. He was no longer lost or broken. The truth had found him, and it burned brighter than power. Tariq didn't rush back to Nairobi screaming for revenge. He stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that hides storms. After years of pain and humiliation, he had learned that silence could be more powerful than anger. He knew he couldn't fight Baraka and Zahara with emotion, he had to fight them with truth, law, and patience. Mr. Kenga, the elderly lawyer who had once worked for his mother, became his closest ally. Together they began digging into the past, starting with Ambrose Kimathi's old company records. What they found was worse than either of them imagined. Ambrose's name had been erased from most files, replaced by Baraka's signature. Entire business transactions were rewritten, dates forged, and documents manipulated to make it look like Baraka had always been the sole founder of the empire. Zahara's name appeared in strange places too, as a consultant or advisor on files that were over 20 years old. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became that Zahara had helped Baraka steal everything from Ambrose after his death. One night, while going through dusty storage boxes in an old law office, they met a woman named Malaika. She was in her 50s, calm but sharp-eyed, and when she heard Tariq's name, she froze. "You look just like your mother," she said softly. She had worked as Ambrose's personal secretary back in the day, and she still had copies of files that everyone thought were destroyed. Inside those files were bank statements, land titles, and letters that proved Ambrose's shares had been transferred illegally to Zahara and Baraka. For the first time, Tariq had real evidence, and with his DNA results, everything matched perfectly. The documents showed that Ambrose had left his entire estate to his unborn child and the woman he loved, Tariq's mother. But after Ambrose's death, Zahara and Baraka had forged new papers, claimed the company, and silenced anyone who questioned it. That was why Tariq's mother had lived quietly until her death. She had been protecting her son from a truth that could have gotten him killed. Tariq's heart burned as he pieced it all together. His entire life, the rejection, the humiliation, the pain, had been the result of a theft so massive that it changed the course of his family's history. But he didn't let rage control him. He had something better, proof. Over the next few months, he and Mr. Kenga worked with lawyers, digital investigators, and accountants to trace every hidden account Zahara had opened. They found shell companies in Dubai, London, and Mauritius, all connected to Ambrose's stolen wealth. Piece by piece, they built a case so strong that even the Mwendwa family couldn't deny it. When it was finally done, Tariq didn't feel joy. He felt calm, dangerously calm. He didn't want to destroy them out of anger. He wanted justice, the kind his mother never got. And this time, he wouldn't walk to the mansion empty-handed. He would walk in with the truth, signed, sealed, and legal. When Chief Baraka suddenly fell sick, the news spread fast through Nairobi's wealthy circles. The once powerful man who had controlled millions was now lying weak in a private hospital, and whispers about his will began to swirl. Zahara, always hungry for control, wasted no time. She called for a family-only meeting at the mansion to discuss the inheritance. The chandeliers were shining, the guards were stationed outside, and everyone important to the Mwendwa name was present. But one face they didn't expect to see was Tariq's. Zahara wanted to make sure he was kept out completely. She told everyone, "That boy has no place here." But when the meeting started, Mr. Kenga arrived, dressed in a crisp black suit, carrying a slim leather briefcase. "I'm here as legal representation for a party with vested rights," he said calmly. Sahara frowned. "And who might that be?" she asked, her tone sharp. At that moment, the door opened, and Tariq walked in. The room went silent. The same people who once laughed at him now stared in shock. Sahara stood up immediately. "You don't belong here," she hissed. Tariq looked at her, calm and steady, his voice firm but quiet. "Actually, I do." He walked slowly to the center of the room, the echo of his steps cutting through the tension. He placed a folder on the marble table in front of everyone. "This," he said, "is the truth you've all tried to hide." Sahara crossed her arms, smirking, "Another one of your fantasies?" But her smirk faded when Tariq opened the folder and revealed the official DNA results, stamped and sealed by the National Court. He slid the papers across the table, letting the silence stretch. "These documents prove that I'm not Chief Baraka's biological son," Tariq said, his eyes locking with Sahara's. "But I am the son of Ambrose Kamathi, the man who built this empire before you both stole it." Gasps filled the room. Relatives exchanged shocked looks. Even Baraka, weak and pale in his wheelchair, lifted his head in disbelief. "That's not possible," Sahara stammered. But Mr. Kenga stepped forward, placing more papers beside the DNA test, copies of old contracts, bank transfers, and forged signatures. "Everything has been verified," he said. "The truth is finally out." Tariq turned to Baraka, his voice calm but cutting. "You let her destroy my mother's name. You let her turn me into a stranger in my own home. But this house, this company, this fortune, none of it was ever yours. It belonged to my father, Ambrose Kamathi." The room was frozen in silence. Sahara's face turned pale, her confidence cracking. Baraka's trembling hand gripped the armrest of his chair as if trying to hold on to what little power he had left. Tariq took a deep breath, looked around the mansion one last time, and said softly, "You built your empire on lies. I'm here to reclaim the truth." Then he turned and walked out, leaving behind a room full of stunned faces and a storm that was only just beginning. By the next morning, Nairobi was buzzing like never before. The truth had finally escaped the mansion's walls, and it spread faster than anyone could control. Screenshots of Tariq's DNA results and the old company documents leaked online. Someone at the meeting had secretly recorded everything, every word, every accusation, every face when Tariq revealed who he really was. Within hours, the internet went wild. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, every platform was flooded with one story: the forgotten heir returns, Sahara and Baraka exposed. People couldn't stop talking. Videos of Tariq standing calmly in front of his family were replayed over and over. Hashtags like #Truth of the Mwendo Empire and #Justice for Tariq began trending. Bloggers dug up old news about Ambrose Kamathi's mysterious death and connected it with Sahara's rise in luxury. Old employees of the company started speaking out, saying they had been silenced years ago. One man even claimed that he saw Sahara burning files the week after Ambrose's death. The whole country was shocked. In less than a day, the empire that had once looked untouchable began to crumble. Investors pulled out, partners ended contracts, and the company's stock dropped overnight. Baraka, once feared and respected, was now the face of betrayal. He called a press conference, his voice breaking as he begged the public for forgiveness. Cameras flashed as he said, "I was blinded by greed. I hurt the people I loved most." But his tears couldn't save him. The truth was out, and the world had already chosen its side. Sahara, on the other hand, tried to escape. Rumors spread that she had packed her bags and planned to fly to Dubai before everything came crashing down. But when she arrived at the private airstrip, the police were waiting. The authorities had issued a warrant for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. She screamed and fought, but it was useless. The same cameras that once adored her now captured her in handcuffs, her face pale and defeated. The video went viral in minutes. People commented things like, "The Queen of Lies has fallen," and "Karma finally found her." Meanwhile, Tariq stayed quiet. He didn't post, didn't gloat, didn't appear in any interviews. He watched from a distance as everything unfolded. The empire that once made him feel worthless was now collapsing under the weight of its own lies. The same mansion that had locked him out now had reporters swarming at its gates. For the first time, the truth was louder than their power. By evening, every major Kenyan news outlet carried the same headline: DNA test exposes multi-million family fraud, forgotten heir returns. Tariq's name was everywhere, but he didn't care about fame. He only cared that his mother's name was finally cleared. Her truth had been buried for decades, but now it shone brighter than ever. The world finally knew who he was, and more importantly, who they really were. Weeks later, the storm had finally settled. Zahara was behind bars, and the once mighty Baraka Mwendwa lay weak in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped softly. His empire was gone, his name ruined, his fortune stripped away. When Tariq entered the room, the air grew heavy. Baraka looked up, his eyes tired and full of regret. "You destroyed me," he whispered, his voice shaking. Tariq stood beside him in silence for a moment, then said quietly, "No, Dad. You destroyed yourself when you destroyed her." He didn't yell or cry. His words were calm, but they cut deeper than anger ever could. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving his father to face the weight of his own choices. Outside, the world now called Tariq a hero, but he didn't see himself that way. He could have rebuilt the empire, lived in a mansion, and taken revenge by living rich. But he didn't want what they had touched with greed. Instead, he donated most of the money to a foundation in his mother's name, to support widows, orphans, and every worker Zahara had exploited over the years. He wanted the wealth to heal, not to destroy. On a quiet afternoon by the coast, Tariq knelt beside his little daughter as they planted a young tree in the sand. The wind carried the salty air, and his mother's photo rested beside them. As the waves moved gently, Tariq looked at the horizon, peace finally softening his face. In a soft voice, he said, "They took everything from me, but truth gave me everything back." The camera pulled away slowly, showing the ocean stretching endlessly, a new beginning growing from old pain. Water wave broken heart fire.